Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today it is time for Friday Reads on April 11th. I'm really filming this on April 10th. I usually do not film in advance. Every single video, I always think, why didn't I film this yesterday and then schedule it to post? But 90% of the time, I do not do that. But I'm doing it today because I know I'm going to be busy tomorrow. And I did want to go ahead and make a Friday wrap up because I have several books to talk about. So last week when I did Friday Reads, I talked about a couple of fun weekend events that were coming up from last weekend. And I had a wonderful time appearing on the live discussion about We Do Not Part by Han Kang. It was part of the Reading the Globe project that is hosted by Katja at Page Turners with Katja and Roz from Scally Dandling About the Books. And Roz hosted this live discussion. It was a great time talking about the book, and then all of the viewers and commenters, a lot of people in the chat that had also participated in the Discord discussion, and then other people who just dropped by because they were curious about the book and wanted to share in the discussion. It was wonderful. So, and I did post the link to that on my community post if you want to circle back and watch that discussion. If you're thinking about reading We Do Not Part, or you read it and you want to hear what we had to say when we talked about it. And then on Sunday, we went to a performance of local theater of Murder on the Orient Express, and that was really fun. I have read that book, and I've seen the old movie, the 70s or 60s. I don't know how old that movie is. I think it's 70s. I haven't seen the more recent adaptations, but I've seen the old movie. I read that book with a group of sixth graders many years ago in the 90s when I had a book club. I used to teach sixth grade reading before I was a librarian, and the kids chose that book one time and we read it. I had forgotten. I remembered, well, I don't want to tell you because it's a spoiler. I remembered something about who done it, but I didn't exactly remember. Stephen was like, how could you not remember this? Because like the resolution of this case is kind of unique. But I didn't really remember the details. But it is a story about a train that departs from Istanbul and it's heading, I don't remember where it's heading. England? Scotland? I don't know. Where's it going? I don't remember. But anyway, there's a group of people on the train and a murder occurs. And then the train gets stuck for a while and Hercule Poirot, the famous Belgian detective, happens to be on this train and he has to solve the case of who murdered this rather abrasive man who is found dead in his compartment with multiple stab wounds. So it was a fun time. Okay, and then also in bookish news, one of the big stories of the week was the announcement of the shortlist for the International Booker Prize. I did watch a couple of the reaction videos to this announcement. I don't think I've read any of these books so far, even though I do have some on my list that I want to read. I just got a notification yesterday that Hunchback came in for me at the library, but I need to check and see how long they will hold it and see if I can get it after the weekend. You know, there's that strategy to not pick something up too soon and then it shortens your window and you're not sure you can get to it right away. So that didn't make the short list, but I still want to read it. And the one book that I do have on hand is Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. This was the one that, from when they first announced the list, this was the most exciting one to me. And then I bought it, and I got the UK copy because I don't like how the US copy looks. So maybe I'll put a picture up there. Like, I just don't like that cover. So I bought this one. I love this cover. I'm dying to read this. I'm just waiting for that moment that I can fit it in amongst other things that I had already planned. So I am going to read it. It might not fit within the confines of the lists and the prize announcements and all that, but I am going to read it. That one and Hunchback. And then there's a couple others that I think sound interesting, and they're not available at the library, and I don't really know that I want to buy them, but so I'm just going to wait and see if any momentum picks up on the discussions that I really, really want to read any of them. But those are the two that I was the most interested in. And let's get to the reading. What was the weekly reading? Well, you know what? I finished up a bunch of things and I have stuff to say. First of all, I had to read the Laramie Project early. This is one of the plays for this month's Endless Drama event that I'm hosting and that is going on in Discord. We read 2 plays every month, roughly divided into the first half and second half of the month, but people kind of come in and out whenever they want to make a comment on whatever play. And so this is the play that's officially for the second half of April, but I needed to read it early because I borrowed it from Emma's university library and I need to get it back to her so she's not overdue. And so I went ahead and read it, and I knew it was going to be tough. I knew all along, and I talked about that in an earlier video. And indeed, it was just as I imagined. It was pretty devastating. This was probably the most. I mean, I read a couple of heavy hitters this year. Women Talking comes to mind. We Do Not Part comes to mind, but this one I think was the most emotionally disturbing to me. And part of it is the subject matter. Part of it is the current times in the United States. I don't know. It's an emotional roller coaster. The Laramie Project came about when the Tectonic Theater Company decided to respond to the death of Matthew Shepard by going to the town of Laramie, Wyoming, and interviewing all sorts of people. They interviewed they found the guy who discovered Matthew Shepard. They interviewed first responders, clergy people in the town, people who knew Matthew, people who knew the murderers, people from the university where Matthew Shepard was a student, all just different kinds of people. And the speed of these interviews, they just sort of, in the play format, there's 8 actors who present the substance of the interviews. And so you get little pieces where they let you know who's who. And I guess on stage they have different little props or body language shifts and things like that help you know when you're moving from person to person. But the kaleidoscope of emotions that this brings out from all the different viewpoints and attitudes of these people, and it just comes on so fast. So alternately, as reading it, I'm devastated, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm uplifted, I feel hopeful, I feel despair, I feel it's just every possible thing. And I was glad it was short because it was a rough ride, man. It's a tough play. And I don't even really, most of the plays we've read, I think, oh, I want to see this. And I do have a lot of questions about how it's presented, but I gotta wait a while. I cannot immediately watch a presentation of this because it was just emotionally taxing and very distressing. And I feel like I might feel differently if I'd read this just even a couple of years ago, but now in the current climate of people trying to roll back rights and protections and just even the acknowledgement of existence, or just, I don't know, just a decay of basic decency regarding people of the LGBTQ community. I mean, I don't know. It hit hard. It hit hard. So I guess I simultaneously recommend it and warn you about it. Read it when you are in the correct headspace. I'm not sure I was, but it was time, and it was my fault because I'm the one that scheduled it into this event, so I had to do it. But it's really compelling. It's really excellent, and it's really hard to read. All right, so let's lighten the mood with a horror book, why don't we? I also read A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is also part of People April, the April event that is absolutely fantastic. And they also have a Discord where you can discuss not just their group read, but other things that everybody is reading in the month of April, and it's really fun and lively. Okay, moving on. This is also for a group. This is part of the Reading the Globe, the same group that read Han Kang last month. This month's selection is A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez, translated by Megan McDowell. These are horror short stories from an Argentine writer. And I read it this week, and people are just starting to get into the reading and the discussing, so I don't want to say too much about it right now, but I like them. I didn't love it. They are not related short stories. It's just a group of short stories. And so for me, it was a mixed bag. There's 12 stories in all in the collection. There's 3 or 4 that stood out that were really fun, creepy, spooky, weird. Some of them were ghost stories. Some of them were more like body horror. Some of them were more like the sins of your past coming back to claim you kind of things. I don't know if they're going to stick with me. They were fun. They were disturbing. They were creepy. There were some jump scares. And I await the discussion to see if there's some extra depths that I am missing, because I missed them. But it was fun. It was a fun time. And now the other book that I finished this week. Dun 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 dun! Drum roll. I have tamed the mammoth. That is The Count of Monte Cristo. I finished The Count. Was it yesterday? I guess it was yesterday. And surprisingly enough, the last chapter of this book is called October the 5th, which happens to be my birthday. Wouldn't it be funny if I had finished it on my birthday? But nevertheless, I finished this behemoth of a book. I, who seldom know mammoths, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It really picks up. People that I heard reviews that said, oh, it seems like it's short because it goes so fast. I can't really agree with that. The beginning of it kind of starts pretty propulsively. It does slow down for a large part of the middle. Not slow down to the sense that I felt bogged down or I didn't want to continue, but the pace doesn't stay, for me, at a high level the whole way. It kind of dips and peaks and valleys. So some days I read a bunch of chapters because something exciting was happening. Other days they were maybe a little boring. I knew they'd be some kind of setup for something else, but maybe those days I only read a couple chapters. Overall, it took me 28 days to read this, and I did read from it every day during that time span. I don't think I took any days off from it. So I read, I don't know how many I read a few chapters a day, 2 chapters, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And it did take 28 days, which is a long time for me to spend on one novel. And I think I'm somewhere in the middle of the span. I've heard people say they got completely engrossed and they set everything aside and they just read The Count of Monte Cristo. And then I've heard people say they're on some sort of very long project where they're reading it over a year or 2 years, very slowly. So somewhere between those two outposts, I'm in the middle, and it took me about a month. The last 250 to 300 pages it really sped up, and lots of things sort of came to a peak. Every kind of trope about adventure stories is in this book. I don't think they were invented for this book, but they are all in here. Every possible thing. Treasures and jewels and escapes and costumes and disguises and false identities and secret romances and deceptive romances and loyal friends and backstabbers, cheaters, revenge, destiny. I mean, it's all there. So I had a good time. I'm really glad I read it. It's going to be a while before I embark on a book that long again, because I just can't read that many books simultaneously. So if one slot is taken up with one very long book, I have to adjust all my other commitments, because I really cannot read more than 2 novels or full-length books simultaneously. I can do 2 books and then like poetry or some short stories, but if one book is going to just take up my slow lane for that many weeks, it's a commitment. It did pay off. I'm really glad I read it. It was a success story. So, and then that brings us to what I am currently reading or about to start today. So I'm currently reading Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, the cartoonist who has written a number of books. It's a graphic memoir, and she's written a few different graphic memoirs, and she had a long-running comic strip that I've never seen, but it's collected in a book that I'd like to see because I love the title, Dykes to Watch Out For. Alison Bechdel in this book is reflecting on her upbringing and especially her relationship with her father, who passed away when she was in college in what might have been an accident, but nobody's her. And this book moves back and forth in time. Alison grew up in Pennsylvania. Her family, her two parents, and her two brothers lived in this big Gothic revival house that her father was obsessively restoring. He just poured lots of energy and sort of a tyrannical obsession into the restoration of this house and its grounds and the gardening. And there's lots in here about all the time and energy that he spent on that. Their family also had the funeral home in town, which is where the title comes from. The Fun Home is what they called the funeral home. So it's a small town, and that was not a full-time job. So her parents were both English teachers as well. The story moves back and forth because there's a turning point in Alison's life. And none of this is spoilers. This is all kind of presented sort of all at once near the beginning. That when she went off to college, she came into the awareness that she was a lesbian. And when she comes out to her parents, it kind of unleashes a fountain of information from her mother, who initially does not have a positive reaction to this, but then she goes on to explain that her father, who they were in the midst of beginning a divorce, had been unfaithful to her throughout the years with men and young boys. And this kind of turns the lens of her memory, where she starts to remember different aspects of her father's behavior and different people that came in and out of their life in a different light. And then at the same time that she's going through her own coming into herself and exploring her sexuality. And just the difference between her closeted father and she herself, who comes out and is more free in the world than her father was. It's a really interesting exploration of her life and her relationship with a difficult person who was so essential to her. And so far, I'm just kind of struck by the candor of looking at somebody who was really a problematic person in many ways, and in the ways that he treated his family. So I'm enjoying it. We'll see where we end up by the end, or what kind of conclusions she reaches. And the artistic style, it's all this black and white and blue. And apparently this is her kind of signature. She doesn't use a lot of color. And there's this point here that I've marked where she is, they have a coloring book in their house that is scenes from The Wind in the Willows. And her father butts in and he sees her coloring in blue, and he butts in and it's like, wait, that caravan's supposed to be yellow. And he just takes over and he says, here, I'll do the rest in yellow and your blue side will be in shadow. And she says, it was a cryonic tour de force. And then I love this panel. He just gets completely carried away with the coloring and the shading, and she has drifted off towards the television. There's a brother sitting there. He just completely took over her coloring project. And that's kind of his personality. He just had to have control over everything. I'm going to continue this today, and I'll report back next week on my final thoughts about Fun Home, but I'm really loving it. I'm also continuing my poetry reading, 44 poems on being with each other, which are collected and discussed by Padraig Tuama. And boy, yesterday was a red letter day because there was just a couple of them in a row that just kind of floored me. I was getting knocked sideways and up and down and backwards between the Laramie project and some of the poems in this book. Oh my gosh. And then today, I'm also going to start The Tale of Despereaux by DiCamillo. And this is going to be the solution to everything that unruffled me in the reading of the week before, because this is a full-on comfort read. It's a buddy read with my friend Michael Clark, and just this will go with me on my trip too, and it's going to be a lovely little escape and a solace as I read this over the next few days. And it's just a fairy tale of a story beautifully crafted, and I will talk more about it next week. All right, so there it is. What are you reading this weekend? What were your highlights of the week? Any thoughts on any of this stuff? Things, books, whatever. I hope to come back. I'm going to try to film some footage of the book festival. I'm not the world's greatest vlogger. That's why I have exactly no vlog videos on this channel. But I will try to get some pictures or clips or something to sew together into a little report of the festivities of the festival. Yeah, that's what happens at a festival. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.